We are doing this. My name is Malika Albrecht, and I am the founding editor of Redheaded Stepchild. And tonight I am super excited that we get to celebrate multi-talented, beloved poets, Les and Joyce Brown. And I'm going to do a brief bio, but I'm going to make it pretty brief because I want to turn it right over to our main stars, who I'm super excited to have here. I was really glad that you all agreed to do this together. I just think this is going to be so dynamic. Les Brown is a native of the mountains of North Carolina. Ph.D. of biology, is professor emeritus of Gardner-Webb University. And as we've been saying, he's multi-talented. He's not only a poet, he's also a visual artist and a writer of short stories. Has been published in many of our favorite journals, which includes Pinesong. We've been talking about Main Street Rag, also Kakalak, and Moonshine Review. A Pushcart nominee, previous winner and finalist for Poet Laureate Award of North Carolina Poetry Society. Les lives with his wife Joyce and cat Gracie, and I haven't seen Gracie yet. She's going to show up somewhere maybe in Troutman, North Carolina. His chapbooks, Cold Forge, which came out in 2022, and A Place Where Trees Had Names, 2020, were both published by Redhawk Publications. We've been talking a lot about presses, so we may have that later if you have questions. Joyce Compton Brown grew up in Western North Carolina within a family of deep rural roots. She earned her BA and MA in degrees from Appalachian State University and her PhD in American literature. She taught at a small university for many years and has published scholarly articles and poetry in numerous journals. For several years, she wrote a column for Shelby Daily Star. Her chapbook, Bequest, which we just saw a picture of, and Les had done the cover, an ink drawing. It came out from Finishing Line Press, and we were talking about how many of us got our start with Finishing Line Press. It was published in 2015. Additionally, she has published Singing with Raw Edges, which was Main Street Rag, and I believe Les has a new book coming out from Main Street Rag in 2025. Additionally, she Standing on the Outcrop was Redhawk, and Hard Packed Clay was Redhawk 2022. She currently lives in Troutman, North Carolina with her husband, Les Brown, who we have here. And I'm going to turn it over to Joyce because Joyce is going to start us off. Thank you guys so very much. And Joyce, I'm going to spotlight you. Hey.
Okay.
There you are. Thank you so much.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
I think I have it
perfect.
on that
We're
nice,
excited.
I think I have it on that nice, flattering setting that makes us all look a little smoother than we might or otherwise, but I hope that's okay. Well, shall I just go ahead and start? I would read everything, pretty much stick to read from this book, which, well, it would look better maybe this way. Hard Packed Clay, and the color came from, if you know anything about North Carolina, the hard packed clay that is very much a part of my Idle County heritage, and the boon about what mothers hate about letting their children get out and play. I started writing because I was kind of obsessed, I guess, as so many Southerners and maybe mountain people are, maybe we all are, with our family heritage, what made us from our past made us what we became. So I was going to start out with one of a poem about the old family farm. Walking the farm with my cousin. Here the trees have stories. The beeches spread their words till they stretch twisted into time. The dirty words those soldiers carved into the bark while they hid. The note the boy left to his family. I have gone home, a month before he died. And then the sycamore that grew beside the pond, where they baptized the sinners and made them whole. And the preacher planted a sycamore cane, which grew to give them shade for years. And then the walnut tree, which sheds its black-barked nuts, so small compared to the big one, gone, that grandmother sold when her Henry died and she needed a new barn and sold the roots for fine burled pipes, which men smoked with half-shut eyes, sending smoke blue curls dissipating into the golden sky. So I didn't live on that farm for more than just a little over a year, but my whole childhood was imbued with it and the stories and visits to it. I'm sorry, I'm challenged by my little tabs here. Well, our Southern family, like so many families, had a problem cousin, a youngster who never grew up. He stayed at I would say an age 9 or so, and there were always stories as to whether it was illness or what, but it doesn't matter. He was a lovable, innocent person. And this is a poem about the place where he most liked to play all of his life. It's called Charlie's Rock. We went down to Charlie's Rock, past Mildred, who told us a secret from deep within her sorrow-laden gaze, while Geneva held her tiny sparrow hand in her own age-freckled one and steadied her with fragile power and commanded us to lay down our words before we could go down to Charlie's Rock, past broken shed and in an end tractor, through tickweed by smooth-barked beaches, where Charlie once had hung his cans so that the trees might sing, where paths are lost in rotting limbs, green catbrier shoots and scrub pines, down bee-balm slope to Musty Creek, where cattails rise from mucky soil. But we went down to Charlie's Rock, and it was there, gripping into earth, and still it gave us room to stand above on moss-green grass and hide below in age-flecked brook. And we went down in our minds for Charlie, who sucked bittersweet whorehound and played soft harmonica tunes and talked child talk forever, while others sold his trees and lost his rock and left his land and left him wandering, playing his songs and saying his letters for some pale semblance of praise. And then we paused at Charlie's Rock, paused to think of Charlie, to feel the fragile brush of his innocence lost like sparrow wings. Thank you. I don't mind if you let me know you're out there. I was in a hurry and read right on past your clapping last time. I'm sorry.
It was delightful.
Okay. I don't mean to sound whiny, but I have to give you a little bit of a personal story, maybe. When I was 4 months old, my father died of cancer. My mother had lived on the family farm and had been in that kind of environment all of her life, but she had to move to a small town in order to make sure the kids got to go to school, didn't turn into farm hands, and where they could pick up odd jobs, because back in those days, we were just getting started with Social Security, and it was that little pitiful amount of money that saved us as a family. We won't get into a political discussion at this moment. Night song. At night, my brothers would giggle in the darkness of their cold iron bed, stacked with storied quilts. They'd cup their hands under hollow armpits, flap elbows till they'd stirred enough air to make fart noises, or maybe quacking ducks. The four of us were in one room, the boys, my mother, and me. Maybe in a bigger house, we would have sought distance at night, solitary and brooding, the boys in little boy fears and fantasies, my mother in memory and resolve. Me and the infantile mystery of shadow faces creeping on bead bed walls. Maybe the house was what we needed, just space enough to feel our bond. Those boys to dim the death they'd watched a year or two ago, their father's final breath. Our mother to know that she had kept us all, in spite of smug well-wishers and orphanage talk. Me to offer a glimpse of childhood unscarred. In that dark room, my brothers could force my sad-eyed mother to laugh against her great pride, where the walls hid all and the beadboard goblins were trapped behind the paint when we were safe and blind and could not read her broken face. She was not to be seen, not to be acknowledged, dressed in less than stoic housewife form, this farm woman of a past age. Loss had left her here in a room, 3 children in the darkness, the careful ritual of pretense in a bead bed fort, a quiet glass, 2 boys salvaging a childhood, creating a reason to smile in the dark. I don't know how much you want to, I don't want to take up too much time. Let me know. Small towns have their own advantage. You always seem to meet odd characters, different people. As Flannery O'Connor said, maybe we just notice them more in the South. This is a conversation I had with Bob. Bob said, "You're pretty good looking to be as old as you are." He was standing by the trash can, ripping cardboard boxes into shreds because he thought they wouldn't fit unless he used his sharp butcher knife to mangle each piece every day, no matter how hard his son tried to hide the kitchen knives. So I said, "Well, thank you, Bob. Be careful with that knife. Don't cut yourself." And we went on talking about his imaginary plan to rebuild this little town, tear down the old shirt mill, bring in a shopping complex, townhouses that would draw thousands. Never argue with Bob. In his world of happy dreams, let him eat 5 meals a day at Randy's place, forgetting each one, anticipating the next. Let him see visions of city prosperity in a tired, downtrodden town. Let him find beauty in an old face, his brain a lacy network of possibilities. That's Troutman. The nice thing about a small town is you have trees and grass and Queen Anne's lace and all of that. So I'll turn to my type of everyday experience that I grew up with. This is called a backyard poem for early March. The sparrows made mad love dancing on the birdhouse roof, then began moving into the nest. They're waiting now, hovering, keeping vigil while we watch. I'm keeping vigil too. So many birds, so many hues. Brave little yellow warbler ventures among the glow-red cardinals. Housefinch offers pink to his brown-gray lady. An occasional towhee flashes his orange and black beauty for some like-minded female to admire. The goldfinches, too, are beginning their showy glow. The males, the beauties, looking for love from the sweet color-muted females who'll decide their fate. I wanted bluebirds to claim the house because they speak of memory and joy. My mother finding a nest in the crooked arms of a chinaberry tree, leading me to discovery with soft steps. I gazed at cerulean eggs, not to be touched, lest their parents abandoned the vigil. Every visit was sacred until at last bluebirds sang on chinaberry limbs. Am I taking up too much time?
That is beautiful. No, you're doing perfectly.
Okay.
I've got a super fondness for bluebirds, so you know.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. I'm married to a biologist, and that kind of shows up. He likes to go to the beach. He's a herpetologist especially, so we love snakes in our house. This poem is not about a snake. This is about a bird visit to the beach. Spring sunset at the pier. Today, pigeons chuckled in purple passion, clasped beaks with golden lust. Blackbirds sang a celebratory tune, while terns scooped silver lunch in gluttonous heaps, and open-mouthed pelicans clapped in arrogant fury for bucket mullet. Till the evening rose up, red with embarrassment, cried, "Enough!" reached down low, spread her glowing arm around the scene, and pulled tight the gray-black shades. Okay. I grew up with fig trees. You guys do figs, make fig preserves? I finally learned to do that, but I've made a lifetime supply, so there'll be no need. We'll serve the rest of them at my funeral. Figs. After the neighbors died, we trespassed their holy grounds, hovered among the fig trees near an empty bedroom window. We peered through glass at iron beds and danced among the figs, pulling nimble branches closer, like partners in a waltz, reaching toward rich dark fruit we plucked free from green stems. Wrapped within the ancient scroll of time, we cradled them in our laps like Cato, who caught fat figs within his gown so that the Senate might take notice. The leaves, palmate, fuzz-tinged, brushed soft against our tender skin. We ate like Aesop's wicked servants, prepared to deny our sick, sweet feast. We knew only the brown, fat turkey figs, not Pliny's 29 varieties from Cyprus and Mount Ida, Lydia and African shores, those warm and azure lands where even the slaves could feast, eat their fill, then lay ripe fruit in the sun for winter, in numbers nearly beyond measure, where gladiators stuffed sweet pink innards down their throats between final performances. We did battle with sticky wasps, gorging on moments of plenty. These days, we're lucky if the tree is spared by winter freeze, that bone-chill wind that leaves limbs frozen and brittle, deadened to spring harvest. But this is a bountiful year. Tree drips with drooping fruit. The feel is royal. Figs' lush leavings brush my arms. Nimble limbs move to my touch. Pleasure like tender hands offer the globular fruit. Purple skin, rosy lush tinge of sweet taste. I come with sugar and syrup and knife, slice away myth and mystery, slave of my own compulsion, spoon oval disc floating into jars, their rose-wrinkled petals pressed against the glass, syrup sweet and pink, joy-rich nectar denying the paucity of last year's harvest. But once you start making fig preserves, you've got yourself in a mess if any of you have ever tried it. Okay. I'll do. Once I got on the subject of vegetables, I couldn't seem to, fruits and vegetables, I couldn't get off. So we can mourn our lost tomatoes as we move into November while I read you about my tomatoes. We ate them sliced, thick red slabs puddled in their juice. Sweet, salty goodness filled our yearning mouths, burst of soft seeds, liquid taste. Sometimes we sugared them in saucers, devoured them as dessert. We ate them sliced with pimented beans, pinto beans, bright against the brownness of everyday meals. We ate them baked in bowls, added butters, sugar, stale biscuits till they blended sweet. Neighbors gave brown bags of harvest. Tomatoes rolled in. Their cracked green shoulders proffered the sweetest bliss of August heat. Our ancient fathers deemed them poison. Surely we would be damned for such pleasure. Tomato and nightshade, both blood-red berries easily conjoined within the mind. The Aztecs drank the juice, stirred potions, invited Eros for wedding nights. The seeds promised fertility. Our wandering fathers, perhaps hoping for such joy, brought back the beauteous fruit with tales of erotic bliss. Even the queen was gifted, some say, by Raleigh, who offered the luscious juice-filled fruit, pressed it toward her powder-tight mouth, her soft lips. October offers only the plant's small laggards, still bursting magic. We lay them resting on loaf bread. These giant hand-sized fruits of midsummer have felt the chill. We will not sully the tomato by bringing winter's cartons of smooth, pale imitations, gassed by ethylene and great greenhouses, sliced like stiff wafers for visual surcease. We will wait for another season. Our small October harvest glows red ripe, the taste of tangy, thick flesh sweeter because we are chasing time. It'll be a while, won't it, before we have that again. Okay, and I'll finish this with a November poem. We enjoy visiting the mountains, the place where Les grew up. The house has been burned, but the place is right in the middle of a beautiful valley. If you have some local sense of place, you may have heard of Linville Caverns, a tourist trap that's not a trap, a small cavern that's a couple of miles from his house. It's a valley. November harvest. We were planting irises in the old yard where his mother had kept flowers before the move, before the old home burned, reduced to cinders, those little childhood pockets sheltering his memories of when he was new and tender. We were way back off Highway 221, where the world moves on at a comfortable distance, crawling cars, a few trucks, all in muted volume. The haymakers were in the golden fields with their machines and pickups. They had mowed our field, the weeds and grasses down to stubs. They were turning the hay in long tossed rows, ready to bale tomorrow. In the next field over, a big Kubota pulled the baler, which sang its chunky song, little robot arms spitting out old-fashioned rectangular bales of hay. Men and young women were loading them on long trailers, a bucolic scene, I guess. He has hoed corn in that field, tilled with a small family tractor. Now we've created a space for shelter during the plague, as if it isn't happening. A good place for softening the distant turbulence, a good place for the heart's resurgent beat of hope. I think that's probably. I think it's a sign unto me that I can't get this page turned. So I think what that says is that was a good stopping point.
Oh, Joyce, thank you so very much. That was amazing. I can't wait for you to see the chat section and all the things that were resonating. We normally do a kind of Q&A, but my sense is we can move to Les, and then we'll come back and any questions that you have for Joyce, go ahead and put it in the chat section, and we will come back to that. Yeah, the Heart's Resurgent Beat is very compelling. It was a beautiful reading. Thank you so much. I'm going to move to Les, and then we'll come back, and because I have some questions written down too. Thank you. Hi, Les. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for everyone for coming, and thanks to Malika and Redheaded Stepchild for having us tonight. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you.
Much of my writing is centered on my childhood home, family farm, and you'll find out that that's pretty much the theme of most of what I've written. First, start off as one from my childhood. This is called The Current. This is from a photograph, or at least it hints at a photograph that was in Post magazine in 1958 of a swimming pool or swimming hole in the river that we spent much of our time in. This is called The Current. We were the same age when we swam away hot days in the baptizing pool of the river under the iron bridge on Pitt Station Road, a stone's throw from his house where his mother gave us peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and iced tea for lunch. Ricky moved away downtown to swim in real pools with girls, while I stayed in the muddy water among trout and horny-head chubs, dodging the muscle-bound boys who jumped from the top girder of the bridge, while I arched my arms against the current that would sweep me down toward town. Okay. This is another one from my childhood. We spent a lot of time outdoors. Much of that time in the summer was spent camping. This one's called Camping in Uncle Dewey's Pasture. I carried my blanket, a can of SpaghettiOs, leftover biscuits, salt-cured ham, Army surplus canteen, matches and Coleman lantern, a hatchet, cook kit, up the highway past family farmland and ancestral homes. I met my cousins and friends in Uncle Dewey's yard below the Clinchfield Railroad fill. We climbed the bank, crossed the tracks, skittered across down the other side, spreading the barbed wire fence, crawling into close cropped pasture. We trudged up the slope near the foot of steep Honeycut Mountain to our level grassy campsite beside a clear stream in the pasture, where giardia had yet to reach, where branch lettuce grew among the green moss and ferns. We built a fire of gathered deadfall and finished our makeshift meal. We log sat in firelight flicker until the tails and lies wore thin. One by one, we rose and went to our peck-ordered selected spot, scooped out our hip hole in the dirt, and rolled in our warm blankets, staring at the constellations until their light faded into dreams of high-fin cars, hoeing corn, and naked girls. This is also from my childhood. It's self-explanatory, I think. It was during the Korean War, and this is called Winter of 1951. My brown aviator cap was soft leather, lined with rabbit fur. It had ear flaps that I lowered when the cold mountain wind cut through the wool toboggans my friends wore. It even had goggles, made me look like my uncles who were flying over Korea. I pretend to fly and wore it until the heat of spring made me raise the flaps, until the seams wore out, and I began to see real images of war through its scratched lenses. I'm somewhat obsessed by my father. He was a mixed blessing, very gentle man who fell very hard into alcoholism. And this is, a number of my poems are based on his life and my relationship with him. This one's called Hanging by the Door. It has a little epigraph. Cock your hat at angles or attitudes, Frank Sinatra. That felt fedora, stained brown as golden mulch, hung on a nail beside the kitchen door. Its brim and band defined him, a farmer driven from the divided land into a dreary, windowless factory, 35 years, worn, tired, wilted with drooping shoulders. He wore it as he stripped fodder, milked the cow, cut firewood. He wore it at his small desk in the corner of a factory stock room. Beneath that hat, his weary mind was filled with debt, duty, doubt, and icy love. Still, with a bourbon toast, he could don that hat, cock it aslant, and pretend to have a certain air of savoir-faire. It still hangs by the door, his sweat stains in the band.
Mm.
He was as I say, a mixed blessing. I loved him dearly, but he lost our land and home and everything, lost his job, and ultimately lost his life to both alcoholism and smoking. This next one is called Aunt Sarah Hula Hoops.
No.
She swings her hips in circles and keeps the hula hoop riding in orbits. Her short gray hair shines in noon sun, bright as the smile on her wrinkled round face. Her flowered apron wafts in the breeze. She has no reason for joy. Her father had beaten out her unborn passion child. Still, she will not bend to his will. On the crumb of land that he threw her, like a scrap from his laden table. She laughs and sips the family bourbon, keeps the rhythm of life moving above the earth in which he lies. My aunt was an amazing person that suffered greatly, but she was always the joy of the family in later life. This one is actually one of the rare ones that I write about my mother. My mother was wonderful. I had no problem at all with her, but it's some reason my father obsesses me. But this is about my mother. It's called Just One Camel. I caught Mama smoking there in front of her cook stove, straight-laced daughter of a godly Baptist woman who obeyed every commandment and added a few of her own. Thou shalt not smoke, thou shalt not drink, thou shalt not fornicate. Mama's world-wise sister, Mary, put her up to it. Only one, never another. When Mama saw me watching her standing right there in the kitchen, she opened the eye of that cook stove and threw that camel right into the fire and brimstone. My mother never smoked again, as far as I know. She may have sneaked off and smoked like we did, but okay. I'm not sure if you know about it or not, but there's a place up on the Blue Ridge Parkway called the Orchard at Alta Pass. They have music on Saturdays and dancing, that sort of thing, and sell all kinds of knickknacks. Their big thing too is selling apples in the fall. This is called a Summer Saturday at the Orchard. It's on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Go between the shelves of apple butter, chow chow, elderberry jam, pickled okra, past the ice cream counter and tip jar, to the bluegrass beat of bass fiddle, mandolin, five-string banjo, and guitar, to the clacking, tapping, shuffling feet. Coiffed women with their blue hair spin under raised arms, their silvered men, and a bent woman shuffles, balancing on her walking cane. She joins the beat. A young boy clogs with awkward intensity before his dancing teacher. Florida, Georgia, Tennessee tags join the Carolina cars in the lot of Orchard at Altipass, where apple trees are only an excuse, a vestige of the past, a drawing card for tourists and cool altitude mountain residents and the natives. The northern and southern transplants and the retired, searching for rest and finding joy in sweating on the vibrating plywood floor in rhythm, forming a common bond of disparity within the layered Blue Ridge undulations. Okay, those are from my book, Coal Forge. It's the most recent book. That backwards. Anyhow, I'll switch now to my first book and read a few of those. I spent a lot of my time in my grandfather and grandmother's big farmhouse where the family gathered, all the cousins, uncles, and aunts, and everyone. And we spent several nights there during Christmas and holidays. So this one, and we slept upstairs, and the family had a few little secrets they like to keep from the children. So this one's called Nights at the Farmhouse. The rough-hewn plaque door of the cat room above grandfather's study with its iron latch stayed closed, unlike others, polished satin brown with white porcelain knobs and raised panels. They warned us, never go through that door. Rawhead and Bloody Bones lived inside waiting for us. We passed it every night, creeping to our feather beds across the long upstairs hall, where we covered our heads, listening under the 9-patch and Dutch doll quilts stitched on a frame hanging under the porch ceiling. Now that door stands wide open. I hear their skeletons clattering, laughing among the debris inside. Actually, the reason that they wanted to keep us out of that room was that there was a drop down a hole in the floor in the corner of it that dropped down into my grandfather's closet. And I'm sure that they were afraid that we'd fall down in there. So they just threatened us with Rawhead and Bloody Bones. Okay. This one is one of the more pleasant poems about my father too. It's called Bathing and Graveling on a Hot Summer Day. We trudged down the gravel driveway across the sparsely traveled highway, following the foot-worn path through the summer's golden wheat field, past grandmother's rambling farmhouse. Dad is carrying his enameled pail full of clean clothes. Steve and I follow through the close crop pasture, past head-bent cows and wallowing horse. He spreads wide strands of shirt-grabbing barbed wire fence for us to crawl through. Blackberry briars and alder bend aside as we push on in cooling dampness, stopping to savor ripe raspberries riding down their silvery canes. Ripples of the North Fork Creek flash in bright sunlight through the copse before we reach the mossy bank, where we would shed our clothes and step naked into the mirror-clear water, soap ourselves, bathed free of cold weather's galvanized tub. We lie among the round stones, clear water swirling, caressing sweat and chore soil from our tan skin. Dad wades from the creek and cuts a fork-thin alder stick, brings it back just upstream. He calls us to watch as he reaches beneath bedded rock, drawing back a silvery flashing rainbow trout, sliding it gill to mouth on his makeshift stringer. You try, he calls to us, With child fear of snake and catfish barb, of failing father, we grew a bit as the stringer filled. We laugh, shout, I have one, with each flailing fish we pull from its shaded rock shelter. We put on fresh pressed clothes, go home with fish and pail of berries to mother snapping beans on the porch. Our father gives thanks for supper. This one is also about my father. It's called Unbroken Ribbon. It happens every apple I intend to eat. That haunting image of my father's obsession with peeling apples perfectly. He would whet his Uncle Henry pocket knife and test its sharpness by shaving his forearm. Only when satisfied with razor's thin blade, he would slice the shallow apple peel, turning it, letting the continuous skin spiral down, a narrow ribbon of red, yellow, green, coiling on thin edge. Testing his skill, he would lift the delicate spring, confirming his talent, admired by none but me. I hunt for the sharpest knife, hone it, peel a poor pile of ragged ribbon that I can never lift, unbroken, to the heights my father reached. This one is the title poem of A Place Where Trees Had Names. Of course, we know that all trees have names. We've got oaks and maples and hickories and whatever, but we gave them names, actual names, some of them. Anyhow, this one is called A Place Where Trees Have Names. It's got epigraph. The waving of a pine tree on the top of a mountain, a magic wand in nature's hand. John Muir. The white pine towered over all others on the high ridge above the deep gash where coal trains snaked their way east. We called it High Baby. It stood at the pasture's edge where I could seek solace from hoeing corn, gathering trains gathering the trains cast off coal, cutting firewood, its girth too great to wrap my arms around. I used dead limbs for steps and handholds, climbing upward into the sky. From among the towering limbs, I could see my grandfather's farmhouse, where my grandmother lay dying. I could see all of the valley, the grain fields, small homes of farm uncles laboring at factory jobs far beyond my view. I could see my mother snapping wrung clothes, hanging them like little flags of surrender on the clothesline. I could lean against the fork of the tree and against High Baby's against High Baby's soothing trunk and see down the valley, the winding sycamore tree line marking the course of the North Fork River through time-quieted farmland. I could see the ant cars and trucks crawling along the highway and to and from the imagined places beyond this valley, this tree I would never leave. I got a little stumbling on that one because my cat came in dragging some toy and screaming at me. She brings us toy mice and screams at us. Okay. Her name's Gracie. She's sweet. Okay. This one is, it'll speak for itself. It's called Wired. Some of you may know, well, I will say this. Some of you may know what an auga horn is. An auga horn is the kind of horn that was on old A model Fords, and I guess T models maybe as well. But anyhow, this is called Wired. At 16, I found an auga horn and wired it under the hood of Dad's pea green 51 Chevy Coupe. He approved it for his son's rite of passage into adulthood, rutting with the other boys. I drove the plain family car to the Catawba Drive-In and blasted "Auga, Auga" as I parked beside the red Pontiac Chieftain with two girls seated in tight Angora sweaters, pink and white, glowing in the dark. They were looking the other way into the blue Studebaker Hawk of our star athlete who didn't wear glasses. I ordered my milkshake, sipped it slowly, then backed out and drove away once more, blasting "Auga, Auga." Okay. All right. This one is, we have property on Linville Mountain, and there's a creek on it called Stillhouse Branch, aptly named because my great-grandfather had a still on it. This one's called Still Searching. I woke up a faded gully road memory by stumped trees that lost a battle to axe and saw, where saplings fight for sky and anchor space up the overgrown rutted path toward a blue brush border ridge, past rusting cables snaked in leaves left by dead men's calloused hands, the same who dug a dying pit beneath a rock-striped cliff face in search for water on this dry southern slope under yellowroot and dog hobbles hint of seep. I go on in spite of huckleberry bush barriers and catbriers grabbing claws, then fall away into dark rhododendron and hemlock hollow to find that place spoken of by old men in overalls, where sour corn vapor condensed above smoke dripped clear as pure water into money jars and seeped into the blue veins of Inuit. I welcome rest beside the icy clear pool on flat rocks, washed, mossed, and sunbaked, where summer's cousins taught me to swim with some sunning water snakes and deep crayfish. I rise and go upstream on balanced steps over round weathered rocks, fighting my way through angled boulders and angry water to a collapsed wall sheltering the dark opening of lore or of truth. I stoop ahead into the dark break with flickering leaf-filtered scatterlight showing me the way between tight walls of damp, darkened quartzite into a chamber where pack rat and bat are home, where rusting barrel staves lie, silent testimony to the passage of time and hard men's secrets. How's my time? Am I about on time? Is that about enough?
Oh, that was beautiful. Les, you and Joyce are going to have such a lovely time looking over the comments. I am just,
I'll quit.
No, I was going to say, if you would read one more, that would be lovely.
Okay.
And then
All
we
right.
can move to questions.
Let's see. Let me find one here. Okay, this one's called Before Sunrise. Epigraph: winter is not a season, it's an occupation. Sinclair Lewis. My mother built fires around the well to thaw water for coffee when the Arctic clipper fell south. That time before the oil drum on the wooden cradle dripped heat down to the floor furnace and water came piped in inside. That was the same time when my father broke the ice sheet on the cow's tub beyond the garden fence where plowed earth heaved bloody ice needles and silvery brush, waiting for dawn's light to turn to warming sunrise. Okay.
Oh, perfect one to end on. If people want to unmute, feel free to do so. Because I think we all kind of want to do this where we just say thank you all Thank you both.
Yes,
It was
please.
so good to be in the company of masterful storytellers. And I think a lot of us were doing the same thing with just feeling like we were there with y'all
Thank
in
you.
Yeah.
these experiences. It's stunning when people are so good at describing something, so the
Yes.
experience becomes part of our own, and the reading was lovely. And I did see one question that I wanted to go back to, and I believe it was Betty. You had a question for
Right.
Joyce and Les. Jump in.
I wanted to know, since you all share the same space, when you're creating your stories and poems, do you share work with each other for suggestions or revisions, or do you work independently?
Well, I'll take that one if I may. With Joyce being an English teacher, I have a built-in critic. So she actually helps edit my poems and gives me so much help on these. I owe her so much for all of my work, every bit of it. But yeah, she shares some with me too. I do read her poems and give her feedback, which she may or may not pay attention to.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It was a delightful reading from both of you.
Thank you.
Truly, truly was. I didn't see any other questions, so I'll just say if you have one, unmute and please feel free to ask. Fortunate enough so we can ask them questions.
Okay, I've got one.
Oh,
I've got one. I'm just curious. What about you guys' writing process? Like, since you're both there, like Betty said, you're in the same space. Do you have like, this is my room, don't open the door, I'm working, or how do y'all work that out? Because I have the luxury of having my husband gone during the day almost every day. So I'm just like, I'm in my crazy writer head by myself. So I'm wondering how y'all make that work.
Well, Joyce has the study and the desk and all that. I have a hospital food tray in the living room and a little tiny bookcase about that. No, that's my little space, and the benefit of it is I don't spread myself out all over creation, which I would. But yeah, we stay in our own.
Which I would.
I don't have any particular time, or I just write when I find inspiration and quiet time.
Yeah. I'll admit I'm the messiest one in whatever activity, and that writing. Les has sometimes taken pictures, I think, just to shame me of my desk, with the paper and his little tiny, perfectly tidy little stack papers. And
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank y'all so much for the answers too. Betty just wrote delightful. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome. We have any other questions for Joyce and Les?
we just
All right.
want to
Well, if we
thank
could
you.
just take a moment to again say thank y'all just
thank
for
y'all.
such a lovely reading. I just loved being translated. I loved, and was so moved by powerful poems. I really was.
We
Charlie's Rock in particular, and your dad's poems. I just really touched.
Oh, really gentle and poignant and a deep sense of place.
We're going to
okay.
say
Thank
that.
you, guys.
We just appreciate everyone
Mr.
that showed up and listened to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Okay.
For open mic, I have Cal,
Okay.
and we'll just kind of move quickly to make sure we let everybody have a chance to read.
Good. Thank you, Les and Joyce. That was really very good. Really enjoyed it. My poem is called American Tobacco Trail. Pale lime green lichen, rogue asteroid of color in a system of browns. Had to press on it, feeling for solid center, rock base, but no. Just its own small colony, no more in sight. Last night I dreamed of bright trees, quaking, dying yellow mustard leaves around the lake, a few fiery reds, some tan and orange just here and there, seeming random as in real life. And someone said, best fall color ever in the dream. That is, I don't know who. Thought I was alone, but true, it was almost shining in southern full sun. Today it's nearly March. People don't know how many bobcats there are, he said the other day at the store. They sleep in the tops of trees in the day. That's why I carry a 38 when I walk the trail on my land. And coyotes will kill anything. Big 12-point buck or doe don't have a chance. 5, 6 nipping all around it. Start eating at its ass when it's still alive and work up. Leave a big mess in the woods, leaves all stuffed up. They fight over the meat, but not a bobcat. It'll tear them coyotes up. They're mean. The full strand of a creek branch rumbled and careened around its curves. There had been a big rain. Made a little white water over a few rocks for a short broken limb. My dog barked and growled the way he does spotting a rival in town come out between buildings, surprised. A sound more lethal out here, it seemed. I thought of the 38 I don't have, wouldn't have probably. We stood silent, listening. His mouth open, his perfect, pure white, ready teeth, pink tongue with a blue spot of ancient Chinese sky dripping. And nothing moved but some leaves in the high trees. I saw no bobcats sleeping. There was just the whir of a power station off in the woods. I guess he barked at that. So it was nothing after all. Not nothing. I just don't know what. We go back to walking. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. That's fabulous.
Good.
Karen, I've got you next.
Oh, okay. I have a short one this evening. Last night, Laura read a poem she wrote for me, that made me cry. Kind of trying to give me forgiveness for having to take down so many trees this year after we had one fall in the house. Anyway, this is about that, the tree experience. 7/5/23, 7:42 a.m. A woodpecker scolds the crunching of gravel under my feet. True, I do not tread lightly here. When will forgiveness come? Stumps and wood chips surround my home. Still, I wear mourning as a hooded robe. I chose the assassins well. Their murders were surgical. Only stumps and wood chips remain, and remorse. I am sovereign here.
Oh, Karen. That was a hard thing when those trees had to come down.
Oh my goodness. I don't know when I'm going to get over it.
Wow. But a beautiful poem in the
Thanks.
Make sure you unmute.
I think I just did.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm going to read a short one too. Well, short-ish. It's called Ring Around a Rosie. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Petals floating, soft wind whirling, blood red dropping from my hands. 1, 2, 1, 2. A child's rhythm, singing, plucking. He loves me not. Petals floating, dying as they fall. 1, 2, 1, 2. Singing, hoping. There is a garden full of roses, if this one does not satisfy. Ring around a rosy, pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, they all fall down.
Wow.
Oh. Wow. Ah, Kamala. I
Beautiful.
love our open mic. I'm always just like, come on, Pete, you just keep writing every week, bringing fire. Julian, if you would unmute, we'd love to hear you.
There we go. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are indeed.
Okay. This poem has some relevance to North Carolina, south of Fuquay-Varina, and it also has some relevance to West Texas, where I come from. The Cap Rock, which I mentioned in here, is a rock formation that runs through West Texas. It's called Farm Road Entropy. South of Fuquay, you remembered cotton on the Cap Rock. Giant wagons, lean and slippage, farm roads whited with their excess, kin, you think, to flat detritus, slapped green on rotting pavements out of flatfoot buckboards. Harvest and waste the passage, bowls unginned, bright leaf uncured, and in their midst a symbol as a woman walked away down chaff tobacco, her slow scuff and shuffle tired seeming, shoes heelless, almost without soles. On her hip a paper sack, groceries you thought, torn corner dripping cornmeal, steady stream all down the road, and there it was, the kingdom of heaven, as figured by Judas Thomas Jesus, kingdom of heaven, like that. You stopped to offer a lift, tell her of her loss, both offers refused. Last you saw, she turned down a dirt side road, stack still leaking, suspicious perhaps of your whiteness or your car and sunglasses. For years you thought you might have told her something. Now with roles reversed, she timeless in memory, you understand what she told you. What else but that the offer is refused? What else but that it all runs out?
Julian. Oh, I love the sounds, the words of the description. Just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christy, and did we, so Christy may have had to leave. If she comes back, we will, pick back up. Hua Ali'i, if you would unmute.
Hello. I'm going to give you a little introduction of where this poem came from. I used to live in Virginia. I was actually out walking on the property of the Federal Aviation's Air Traffic Control System Command Center property. And so there's a pond out there. And so this relates to that. It's called Visual Flight Rules. Overhead, a flock of Canadian geese appear to be on the final approach for the pond in front of me. They are honking air traffic control commands to the unknown controller in the invisible tower. Each goose spaced by nature's separation minimums so as not to cause a midair collision. Smooth landing as feet sink into the frigid pond, right and left of an unneeded center line. Oops, 2 geese are on a missed approach. Never mind, they're just flying through restricted airspace. On the body, under the wing, I am enveloped by the spectacular colors of Alizarian crimson and the bright orchid with a sweet splash of goldenrod that reminds me of the onset of dusk. Oh, daylight's fiery light bulb, as she fades into twilight, is lullabied by these gifts of nature who are serenading her to sleep.
Oh,
Oh,
gorgeous.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Regina, And then I have Regina, Catherine, and Betty, just to let you know.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to that dynamic duo, the Browns. You called up all of
Yes.
my ancestors. It was just beautiful the way that you told those stories poetically, and I'm impressed at your ability to do it and not cry, and all of that. This poem that I'm going to read is actually a poem that is found in this book, and I know many of you have poems coming out in Kakalak, and so it is a poem for my grandmothers. I say it's pulled from collective memory. It's entitled Black Blues Gone. Grandma's hands soothed an old unwed mother. Grandma's hands used to ache sometimes and swell. Grandma's hands used to lift her face and tell her, she'd say, baby, grandma understands that you really love that man. Put yourself in Jesus' hands, grandma's hands. On cold mornings, my grandmother would light the stove with fire and dry kindling to warm the house and our stomachs. She would heat sweet potatoes, still in their rough papery skin from the night before. One day I rose earlier than usual and saw her walking outside my brown bag sealed window, tattered coat, collar pulled around her ears, woolen socks pulled over her hands, and as she bent and reached toward the woodpile, I saw the grimace and wince replace the soft brown gentleness of her face. This was the first time I had seen her as anything but God. Poor and Black we were, but she never allowed us to feel the sting of the pain of this existence, nor experience the skewed culture often birthed from abject poverty and exclusion. She was our savior, and we resided in her courts, covered by her care, until such time as our skin toughened to the world. Her garden bloomed as if it knew her and loved her. Her touch, her talk, her tenderness, it lifted up offerings of fresh vegetables, enough for her to can for long winter months, and sprouted lush herbs for healing balms. She fed and treated all she knew who needed her care. She fought through pain to create a path for promise. The blue of Blackness in this cruel South would not deter her resolve to tend to her people in her garden of hope.
Oh. Woo. Gorgeous, just gorgeous. Kakalak this year is going to be amazing. I'm looking forward to getting a copy. Catherine, I have you next. Make sure you unmute. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
You're good.
Here I am. And again, also, thank you for the poems read, for Les and Joyce, and I love the open mic, always. This is called Chatter. The cacophony of miscellaneous, extraneous business grows louder with less meaning. Seeking sanctuary, away I stroll, outside, under a moonlit sky, peace and quiet, serenity. That's it.
Nice.
It's gorgeous. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Sometimes I feel like the poems in open mic start talking to each other. It's fun.
Yes.
Betty, I have you final, and thank you all so much.
Okay. I grew up in Philadelphia, but we had a summer home on the New Jersey shore. So I was entrenched in the sand and beach from the time I was 3 years old, which is carried over to where I live in Florida. I just love the water. So this poem is titled New Jersey Fall Beach. Each grain of sand gives a sigh of relief as the waves crawl out for low tide. Brown pelicans swoop down to survey fresh deposited clams, their flexible tongue muscles scooping up with delight. Sudsy whitecaps reach up to the clouds. Cool wind chills settle on the beach. The summer said goodbye as autumn makes a quiet entrance today. Now I transition myself to the thought of icy cold water. I cannot walk the beach unless my red-tipped toes are covered in the salty water. Suddenly, a fear of death comes over me like a buzzard encircling a carcass. There will be no days of sun. Sea grasses will turn the color of cinnamon. My serotonin level will shrink, and the dark days will make their yearly entrance. Thank you.
It booted me. Sorry, guys. I missed the ending of the poem, Betty. I apologize deeply. It just suddenly I was frozen and I was like, where am I? And then it rebooted. Happens with my rural internet. I appreciate that y'all are so gracious with these errors. It's been good to be in your good company, and Les and Joyce, just fabulous. I deeply appreciate everybody's presence here. It was great to have y'all. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Malika.
right, guys.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful week.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.